So you're looking to get into cybersecurity. Awesome. But right away, you hit a huge question. Where do you even start? Do you bury yourself in books and theory, or do you just jump straight onto the keyboard and start practicing? Today, we're going to break down that classic dilemma, the blueprint versus the practice. Look, it's a massive field, right? When you're just starting, it feels like you're standing at the bottom of this gigantic mountain. Over on one side, you've got all the structured maps and guides, the books, telling you what you're supposed to learn. And on the other side, the raw, hands-on keyboard time of actually doing it. So, which way do you go? And yeah, the cybersecurity crossroads, that's the perfect way to put it. The sheer number of certifications, courses, and labs out there can be totally overwhelming. It's so easy to get paralyzed by choice. But what if it's not actually about choosing one path over the other?
To figure this out, we're going to explore two powerful but very different ways of learning. First up, we've got what we'll call the blueprint. It's detailed, it's structured. Then we've got the gym. It's all hands-on, all practical. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around because the real secret is seeing how these two work together. Okay, so let's jump into our first world, the blueprint. And for our purposes, the ultimate blueprint is something called the NIST framework. Seriously, think of it as the official architectural plan for the entire cybersecurity industry. So what is this thing? Well, it was developed by NIST, that's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and its whole purpose is to create a common language for everyone. It systematically breaks down every job, every task, and every skill in the field. It's basically the master map of the entire territory. And how does it build this map? Well, it uses these core building blocks. It starts with specific tasks, like conduct a vulnerability scan. Then it links that task to the knowledge you need to have, the practical skills you need to be able to do, and the overall abilities to put it all together. And here, this is where you can really see the power of the framework. Check this out. It shows how it all connects. You've got a work role, right? A penetration tester. That role has a specific task, conduct penetration tests. And to do that task, you need the matching knowledge about the principles and tools and the hands-on skill to actually use them. See? Every single piece is logically linked together. So the blueprint is absolutely invaluable. It tells you what you need to learn and why it's important for a specific job. It gives you a roadmap, it gives you context. But there's a catch. It doesn't teach you how to actually do any of it. For that, we gotta go somewhere else entirely. All right, it's time to head into our second world, the gym. This is where all that theory gets put to the test. And a perfect example of a cybersecurity gym, especially for beginners, is a classic little virtual machine called Kioptrix.
Yep, this is the training ground. This is where you go to build that muscle memory. It's the one place you are absolutely allowed to fail, to experiment, to break things, and to learn by doing it all in a totally safe environment. Less reading, more doing. So Kioptrix is what's known as a boot-to-root challenge. It's a machine that was intentionally, on purpose, built with security holes. Your job? Find them and exploit them, all from the safety of your own computer. It's a puzzle, it's a challenge, and it's an incredible learning tool all rolled into one. The goal is really simple, but it's not easy. You start with nothing but the machine's IP address, and your goal is to get root access. That's full administrator control. You do it by following these classic steps. You find it and scan it, you identify a weakness, you use a tool to exploit that weakness and get your first foothold, and then you work your way up to owning the whole system. And that's what the gym is all about. This hands-on lab is where that head knowledge becomes real skill. It's where you finally learn how the tools actually work, how exploits function in the real world, and most importantly, how to think like an attacker so you can become a better defender. Okay, so we've got the blueprint, the map that tells us what to learn, and we have the gym, the place where we practice. Now, on their own, they're both super useful, but the real magic, the magic happens when you bring them together. This slide connects the dots perfectly. Look, on the left, you have the blueprint, a nice knowledge statement, K004. It says you need knowledge of vulnerability assessment tools. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Well, on the right, you see it in the gym. It means firing up a tool called Nmap to scan the Kioptrix machine for open ports. The abstract idea becomes a concrete action. Let's take one more example. Remember that skill statement from the blueprint earlier? S0079, skill in using penetration testing tools and techniques. I mean, it sounds good on paper, sure, but what does that look like in practice? Well, it looks like this. It means finding an old, known vulnerability in a file-sharing service called Samba that's running on the Kioptrix box. Then it means using a tool, maybe something like Metasploit, to launch an exploit against that vulnerability to get your first remote access, a shell, on that system. That is what the skill looks like. It's taking knowledge and applying it to achieve a specific goal. So, building your skill set. How do you actually do this? How do you take this idea and apply it to your own learning journey? How do you combine the map with the real-world territory? Here's the most crucial point, so listen up. It was never a choice. It's not the blueprint or the gym. The people who learn this stuff the fastest and the best, they use the blueprint to guide their training in the gym. They're two sides of the exact same coin. So here's the balanced approach. Here's your game plan. You start with the blueprint. Use a framework like NICE to find a job role you think is cool and figure out what knowledge and skills you need for it. Then you step into the gym. Find a lab like Kioptrix that lets you practice those exact skills. Let the theory from the blueprint guide what you do in the gym, and let the practice you get in the gym bring all that theory to life. Look, the path to a career in cybersecurity isn't about choosing between books and a keyboard. It's about using the books to know what to do with the keyboard. The structure is there for you. The tools are all available. The only real question left is, what are you going to build first?